Vaccines, face coverings and staying at home when you're ill are among the key measures advised as COVID restrictions ease. Everyone wants to get back to doing the things they love, but with COVID cases remaining high, it's more important than ever to stay safe as we move into the stage where we live with the virus. Here are some of the steps you can take to keep yourself and others around you safe and keep life moving. Get boosted. If you haven't had your vaccine yet, it's not too late, and if you've only had 2 doses, it's time for a booster. If you're not vaccinated, you're more likely to end up in hospital if you catch COVID than someone who is. And don't forget long COVID. Many people have found it has reduced their ability to work, exercise and live normally. Wear a face covering. Wear a face covering over your nose and mouth when you're in an enclosed space such as a busy train or crowded shop. People infected with COVID-19 release contagious droplets when they breathe out, so a face covering helps to avoid spreading the disease. Let the fresh air in. If you're meeting people indoors, it's important to let fresh air in, so it's a good habit to open the windows for 10 minutes every hour when people visit. It's also best to open the window if you're sharing a car, or on public transport or working in a small office. It's so important to ventilate indoor spaces. Professor Catherine Noakes, Professor of Environmental Engineering at Leeds University. Opening windows, even if just regularly for a short time, can make a big difference. This way fresh air can disperse and blow COVID-19 particles away to decrease the risk of others being infected. Stay at home if you're ill. If you have COVID symptoms, high temperature, a continuous cough or a loss or change to your sense of smell or taste, it's vital that you stay at home. Take a test and avoid contact with others. In Scotland, continue to follow the self-isolation rules if you have symptoms. For more information about the guidance in Northern Ireland, visit nidirect.gov.uk/coronavirus, and for Scotland, visit Governor Scott, Coronavirus COVID-19. Below we hear how readers are getting back to the things they love while staying safe. It's about being sensible. V. Roberts, 43, runs Insight 2 Marketing and lives in Croydon with 3 children. She's looking forward to new opportunities as restrictions ease. When I had COVID, I couldn't walk around my home without getting out of breath. My respiratory system hasn't fully recovered, but now I'm just getting on with it. I feel, as adults, most of us are responsible, and most of us are not selfish either. It's about being sensible and managing our own expectations. So, for me, I'm exercising what I was doing before. I'm still hand washing and I'm still making sure I've got my hand gel in my bag. But I don't want to restrict myself from opportunities, because you've got to meet people and go to networking events. For us to develop as business owners, we have to kind of pull our guards down a little bit. I've got events coming up and I'm making sure that I'm using rooms with ventilation and there are regular breaks. So things have changed in terms of the logistics, but I'm looking forward and working around COVID, as opposed to putting everything on hold. We have to live for now, and I'm continuing with business as usual. And I'm encouraging my own clients to do so as well. A friendly and safe welcome. Ross Evans is a third-generation publican who's glad to be able to safely welcome customers to his oak-paneled pub in London. The last 2 years have been a struggle, with so many false starts, when we thought we were set to be able to plan for the future only for another variant to come along. But we seem to be on the final straight now, so it's nice to be able to look ahead and start seeing the pub fill up again. Everything has changed, obviously, so we need to balance people's increased needs to feel safe with ensuring the friendly welcome the pub has had since the 16th century. There's still hand sanitizer on every table, and we'll be making sure there's plenty of fresh air flowing through the building. That becomes easier when the weather starts warming up. It's all about making people comfortable, and obviously our staff are key to that. Pubs are in my family and pubs are part of British life, too. It's so heartening to see friends reuniting after time apart and work colleagues going for a drink after work. And the great thing is, there is now confidence returning that pubs are doing their bit to make themselves safe. We are getting party bookings for months in advance again, which we found dried up during the worst of the pandemic. If we're going to live with COVID, we've got to start living. Mary Soskin, 73, a retired lawyer from Finchley, London, is happy to take precautions if it means she can get back to socializing. Like most of my circle, I understand we're going to have to live with COVID. If any of us catch COVID, we're going to isolate. I found it quite scary in the beginning, because my whole life was actually lived outside my home. And now, because of what happened with lockdown, suddenly I had to start doing everything from inside the home. I started playing bridge in my circle, and that was my salvation. If I hadn't had that, I would have been mentally in a very difficult. But now I've had my 2 vaccines and I've had the booster. If we're going to live with COVID, we've got to start living, so I've already flown to Tenerife. I was very nervous about it, particularly printing out the forms and making sure I'd got everything right. But it was a good idea that I went because, having done it once now, it's not going to be such a stressful experience again. I tend to think that the best way to stop COVID spreading is to actually wear your mask. The only time I'm in a situation where there might possibly be crowdsource on public transport. I've been using it for some time, but I've been very, very cautious about times of travel. But now I think we've just got to get on with life. It makes sense to be cautious. Lee Chambers, 36, from Preston is a psychologist specializing in workplace well-being. He sees more and more employers encouraging their staff to stay home if they are feeling ill. As the founder of Essentialize Workplace Well-being, what I'm seeing now is that businesses are a lot more aware of presenteeism, and employers don't want to see people turn up to work when they're ill. There's a lot more sensibility from employers, so if you're not well, use the remote technology we've got to work from home rather than spreading colds, flu and potentially COVID around. It makes sense to be a bit more cautious, and if you're really not well, you need to be off sick. I've had my COVID booster, and I think making sure you're vaccinated offers you protection and a little bit of stability. I'll still be wearing face coverings for the time being. I'm navigating my own world, transport, shops and offices, and it's starting to feel like it's a personal choice. Now I think face coverings are becoming accepted as someone's collection of things they check they have before leaving the house. So I'll wear one when the risk feels like it might be a bit higher, like if I'm on the tube and it's rammed and I'm in close proximity to a lot of people. But if I'm in a place that's more sparsely populated where the ventilation is significant, I'll be a little bit more relaxed. If I'm in an office, I'll have a mask on in the corridor and lift, but take it off at the desk. I think ventilation is an important part of our lives now. Just having airflow is so good for us. From a well-being perspective, it's something businesses have become a lot more aware of, and we're starting to be more mindful of what we can do because it doesn't take much to open a window. After 2 years of restrictions, it's quite normal to feel anxious. Many people have loved ones who've suffered and potentially people who've passed away, and that's not going to be wiped from our memories overnight. We're all starting to come out a bit more and find a place of balance in our lives. That means we're not at risk of isolation, or of getting frozen in a pandemic footing when we're trying to move towards things opening up. People are moving at different speeds, but it's like the motorway, there's a lane for